The rain against the stone casement is relentless, a metronome counting down the endless skirmish. It's the sound of London under perpetual siege, the damp chill seeping into everything, finding the weak points in the mortar, the cracks in the discipline. You came in from the cold, boots still wet, smelling of mud and exhaustion. You expect strategy, a map, a flanking maneuver, the disposition of enemy armor. You came here for the logistical breakdown of the immediate theater of operations. But I tell you, soldier, the immediate theater is irrelevant if the commander-in-chief, which is to say you, is compromised. The only war that truly matters is the one you carry in your bones, the one fought on the contested ground between your ears. Sit. Take the weak heat from this fire. Ignore the damp chill clawing at the wool of your greatcoat. We are not discussing comfort. Comfort is a dereliction of duty. We are discussing command, and command begins with the fortification of the self. You've seen them, the men who chase power as if it were a fleeting objective on a distant hill, the loud ones, the ones who mistake frantic energy for true authority, who require the immediate submission of a room, the snapped salute, the nervous agreement, to feel valid. They are noise, nothing more than dust kicked up on the road by a passing column. They possess the rank, perhaps, they hold the provisional commission, but they lack the fundamental weight, the gravitational pull of genuine competence. They are built on borrowed time, their foundation perpetually compromised by the shifting sands of external opinion. They are the definition of high operational risk. Then you see the other man. He enters the room and the air compresses. He doesn't demand silence. He assumes it. He doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard over the noise of the anxious and the insecure. His presence is not an intrusion. It is a stable fact, like the bedrock beneath the Citadel. He embodies, undeniably, a aura de homem em paz consigo mesmo. It sounds soft, doesn't it? Peace, a word for diplomats, for priests, for the men selling wool in the marketplace. But I tell you, boy, that peace, that profound, settled stillness, is the highest state of military readiness. It is the peace of a perfectly supplied, completely fortified garrison, sitting atop a hill of granite, its guns oiled, its men rested, its defenses insurmountable. This man projects an authority so natural, so intrinsic, that it requires no display, no performative flourish. It is simply there, a measurable constant in the room's atmosphere. That deep, settled stability does two things simultaneously, acting as a perfect strategic filter. First, it attracts the loyal and competent. People of substance, those who seek order, precision, and competence, gravitate toward the man who owns his own ground. They trust the silence. They understand that his focus is not wasted on petty self-justification, but dedicated entirely to the mission. They sense that they are operating under a steady hand, not a trembling one. Second, and critically, it repels the weak and the malicious. The petty, the manipulative, the disrespectful. They are scavengers. They perpetually seek weak points to exploit, leverage to gain, emotional buttons to press. When they engage with the man at peace, when they try their usual tactics of agitation, manipulation, or insult, they find none. They encounter stillness. They realize their agitation yields nothing but a perfectly calibrated lack of response. When they cannot locate the enemy's perimeter, when their reconnaissance meets only impenetrable silence, they retreat. Disrespect is the reconnaissance of the insecure. When they cannot locate the enemy's vulnerability, they shift their attack elsewhere, seeking softer targets. The central problem, however, is that every modern man believes this peace is an inheritance, a soft luxury to be acquired after the war is won, after the bank account is full, after the titles are conferred. They fail to understand a fundamental strategic truth. Peace is not the reward for victory. Peace is the weapon itself, forged in the heat of constant internal battle. Why do the majority of your peers, the ones wearing the same boots, the ones with the same ambitions, fail to hold this critical ground? because they are constantly fighting on the wrong front. They confuse the mere appearance of activity, the frenetic pace, the constant communication, with the act of disciplined command. They live in a perpetual state of operational compromise. Their internal borders are porous. Their psychological logistics are chaotic. They are reacting to every shift in the wind, every hostile glance on the street, every change in the market's noise, every slight perceived on the wires. They have outsourced their internal defenses to external forces, to public opinion, to transient victories, to the approval of judges who do not even know their name, or worse, whose judgment is irrelevant. This is the state of constant alert without purpose, the exhausting state of being perpetually ready for a skirmish that offers no strategic gain. We call this high-alert chaos anxiety, but militarily speaking, it is nothing more than insufficient entrenchment. You cannot be at peace when the enemy occupies the supply routes leading to your own mind. A man who lacks internal peace is a general who allows the enemy to set the terms of engagement. He is constantly compensating for his own internal deficits, demanding respect through volume, demanding attention through performative acts. He needs the world to confirm his existence every single hour of every single day. This is not authority, it is dependence, dressed in ill-fitting camouflage. The moment the outside validation is withdrawn, the moment the market dips, the crowd turns, or the insult lands, the entire defense collapses. The dependence is the weakness. Your objective, from this moment forward, is to cease the external war, to stop caring about the skirmishes that offer no strategic gain, and dedicate all resources to the meticulous, brutal fortification of the inner citadel. The field manual for this operation is absolute and unforgiving. It demands 3 laws of strategic deployment. Follow them, and the aura will cease to be a hope. It will become a gravitational constant. In Beloi, strategic logistics, the dichotomy of control. The foundation of every strong position is robust logistics. You cannot defend a line you cannot supply, and you cannot supply a position if your resources are squandered on irrelevance. You must know intimately what you control and what you do not. This is not philosophical meandering, this is tactical necessity. Every day, men waste their finite strategic resources, their time, their focus, their emotional energy, which are non-renewable stores, on matters entirely outside their jurisdiction. They rage against the weather, against the past decisions of others, against the inherent stupidity of the masses, against the opinions of strangers. They launch artillery assaults on fortified positions they can never capture, leaving their own supply depots and forward positions completely unguarded. We must differentiate between our barracks and the exterior battlefield. If you commit resources to controlling the chaotic, uncontrollable external battlefield, you deplete the barracks, your mind, your character, your energy. If you focus solely on perfecting the barracks, making them structurally sound and ruthlessly supplied, you become impregnable. The peace you seek, a aura de homem, em paz consigo mesmo, is simply the state achieved when you have deliberately and brutally ceded all authority over that which you cannot influence, thus freeing maximum resource allocation for that which you can control, your immediate effort and your disciplined response. Consider the Roman standard, Lucius Quinctius Cincinnatus. He was a man defined by this strategic isolation. Called from his plough to assume absolute dictatorship when the Republic faced total collapse, he did not rage against the crisis. He did not waste a single moment lamenting the political failures or the enemy's strength. He assessed the threat, executed a perfect, swift strategy to relieve the trapped consul, defeated the Aequi, and then, 16 days later, laid down the entirety of his absolute power and returned to his farm. His authority was absolute, precisely because it was temporary and conditional. He did not covet the power. He executed the duty. His self-worth was not derived from the title dictator, but from the unwavering quality of his own effort and judgment. whether wielding the plough or the fasces, the symbol of Roman command. The man at peace is the man who can assume supreme command or retire to obscurity without altering his internal metrics of success. The aura he projects is the confidence that he serves a higher internal law, not the transient demands of the state or the crowd. He understands the limited engagement. Take also the case of Julius Caesar before crossing the Rubicon. The act itself was a monumental career-ending, life-ending risk, but history shows that Caesar spent years, not days, solidifying his internal control. He meticulously calculated the loyalty of his legions, the economic leverage he possessed, and the political climate. By the time he stood on the riverbank, the decision to cross was not an emotional gamble. It was the final, inevitable, tactical consequence of hundreds of smaller, controlled decisions already made. He accepted the totality of the consequences: civil war, the destruction of the Republic, his own possible execution, before his horse took the first step into the water. The internal peace he held at that moment was the peace of a man who has calculated the full operational cost and decided the price is acceptable. He was not nervous because he had already made peace with the absolute loss. You must enforce this law at the start of every operational day. When a potential problem arises, a disrespectful subordinate, a market collapse, an unexpected betrayal, a traffic jam, you must apply the surgical blade of dichotomy. Ask yourself coldly, is this within the perimeter of my command? If the answer is no, then the necessary action is strategic abandonment. You release the emotional charge associated with trying to manipulate the uncontrollable variables. You recognize that to worry or to rage is to waste irreplaceable ammunition on phantom targets. You simply register the external fact and move your resources back to the interior. If the answer is yes, then your focus must become surgical. Execution without complaint, total commitment without guarantee of outcome. You control the process. The outcome is governed by factors outside your perimeter. You never confuse the two. This ruthless allocation of attention is the essence of internal peace. You are not passive. You are strategically efficient. The man who refuses to waste his energy on external chaos has boundless energy for the construction of his inner discipline. His stillness is the silence of maximum calibrated effort. He conserves the finite resource of self-control for when it truly matters. The daily resource audit. To implement Law I, you must treat your attention like a finite budget of ordnance. 1. Morning briefing. Before engaging with any external stimulus, write down 3 non-negotiable strategic objectives for the day. These must be within your direct control. 2. The intervention signal. Establish a physical trigger, like clenching your fist or taking a single deep breath, to be deployed immediately when you feel frustration or anger rising over an external event. This signal is the mandatory halt order. 3. The containment log. Throughout the day, log every instance where your focus was drawn to an external element you could not control. Tally the total time lost. You must visually track the cognitive waste. If you lose more than 1 hour in total daily to the uncontrollable, you are operating at a resource deficit, and the Citadel is compromised. You will not find peace until that waste is eliminated. Aga's Law 2. Absolute defense. The immovable object. The enemy's primary tactical objective is provocation. They throw stones at the walls, hoping to draw out a defense. A reaction that wastes your resources and compromises your strategic position. They seek a lever to move you. A reactive man gives them that leverage freely. He's a hinge on which the aggressor can apply force. The second law states that authority is not the act of enforcing control over others, but the absolute, unwavering refusal to surrender control over oneself. The moment you react, with anger, defensiveness, compensatory ego or fear, you have handed the enemy the remote control to your nervous system. You are being played, and the general who is played is no general at all. The aura of peace is the projection of the immovable object. It is the understanding that you are not vulnerable to kinetic attack from cheap insults, manufactured dramas, or the emotional hysterics of others. These are not threats. They are tactical probes, tests of your sovereignty. A soldier who loses his temper in the field has lost his focus and jeopardizes the lives of his comrades. A commander who loses his temper in the command tent has forfeited the moral and practical authority to lead. Temper is a luxury only the defeated can afford. The immovable object does not mean absorbing abuse silently like a whipping boy. It means assessing the input without granting it emotional validation. If a man insults you, his words are merely sounds in the air. The resulting feeling of insult is your choice, your acceptance of the definition of yourself that he is offering. A man at peace knows his definition is written in steel, forged by years of disciplined action, and cannot be erased by chalk. His calmness under pressure is not patience. It is the instantaneous strategic realization that the threat is trivial and unworthy of a response that costs valuable operational energy. The Spartans were masters of this concept. Their discipline was famous, but it was rooted in an absolute economy of action and speech, the laconic style. When Xerxes, the great king of Persia, demanded that Leonidas surrender his arms at Thermopylae, the reply was 2 words: Molon Labe, come and take them. This was not a fit of rage or a desperate boast. It was a perfect strategic move, dismissive, unambiguous, and entirely self-contained. It used minimal resources, 2 words, to exert maximum psychological pressure and define the terms of the engagement. The words came from a man who had already settled the internal account of his own life and duty. There was no internal conflict to exploit. Leonidas was perfectly at peace with the probability of his own death. Thus, he was impossible to threaten. We find the same principle articulated by Marcus Aurelius, a general and emperor who understood command as internal maintenance. His entire philosophical system, Stoicism, is nothing more than a field manual for establishing the inner citadel. He taught that the key to peace is recognizing that external events are indifferent, and only your judgment of those events matters. If you remove the judgment, all that remains is the data. The objective is to make your happiness and your equilibrium dependent entirely on your virtue and effort, not on the shifting, unreliable external world. The moment of provocation is your Thermopylae. You must hold the narrow pass. If you allow the enemy past the gate of your composure, they will not just damage your ego. They will sack the city, compromising your ability to make rational decisions for hours or days afterwards. The historical precedent proves that the most authoritative response is the one that demonstrates your internal environment is completely independent of the aggressor's action. It repels disrespect because disrespect relies entirely on provoking a return volley, an emotional payment. If the volley never comes, the attacker looks absurdly isolated, hanging exposed on the wire. The 72-hour hold and intelligence analysis. To forge this non-reactivity, you must install a mandatory delay mechanism. Treat emotional spikes, whether of anger, desire for immediate validation, or fear, as incoming enemy fire. You are forbidden from deploying a counter-response, verbal or physical, until a minimum of 72 operational hours have passed. This is not passive avoidance. It is strategic withdrawal to an analysis bunker. If insulted, you respond with silence, a simple acknowledgement of the input, or a neutral data-driven question, and nothing more. You do not explain your position. You do not justify your actions. You do not defend your character. You withdraw immediately to the barracks. During the 72 hours, you analyze the threat, not as an attack on your ego, but as raw intelligence on the enemy's disposition. You ask, 1. The intent assessment. What does the aggressor truly want? Power, attention, to see me lose control. 2. The cost-benefit analysis. What resources would a full emotional response consume? What strategic gain would be achieved? 3. The vulnerability check. Why did that specific attack hurt? What internal, unguarded position did it target? This reveals an insecurity in you that must be immediately fortified, regardless of the aggressor's intent. Invariably, after the required holding period, you will discover that 99% of provocations require no response at all, or perhaps a response so minimal and surgical that it bypasses the emotional drama entirely. The peace you gain is the direct result of eliminating impulsive skirmishes and turning every attack into a source of valuable intelligence for your own improvement. Yet law 3, strategic silence, the weight of unused ordnance. Many men mistake their willingness to talk for the projection of their authority. They feel compelled to fill every vacuum, to explain their success, to defend their future movements, to comment on every event. They are constantly signaling their position, giving away their strategic intentions, burning resources in constant, unnecessary communication. This is the hallmark of the recruit, unsure of his standing, not the commander. True authority is not the ability to speak, it is the capacity to withhold speech. Strategic silence is the disciplined deployment of reserve power. If you feel the need to broadcast your strength, it suggests, fatally, that you doubt the visible evidence of that strength. A man at peace does not need to advertise his peace. It is the measurable gravity of his presence. His power is known not by the noise he makes, but by the measurable effect he has on his environment. The sudden hush when he listens, the straightened spine of the man addressing him, the clear efficiency of the operation around him. The third law dictates that you must treat your words as valuable, non-renewable strategic assets. They are ordnance, bullets, shells, irreplaceable charges. You do not fire a shell to scare a rabbit. You only speak when the objective is clear, the target is validated, and the resulting change in the strategic landscape justifies the expenditure of the resource. The man who speaks minimally speaks weightily. His words fall like iron, each sentence a pronouncement, a fixed point. The man who speaks constantly is like sand pouring from an open sack, no mass, no impact, easily dismissed. The aura of peace is created by this reserve. When people interact with you, they sense that there is a vast, unquantified depth of capability, knowledge, and self-control that you are not deploying. This sense of unseen reserve is far more intimidating and respectable than any public display of skill or rhetoric. It attracts those who seek stable gravity and repels those who seek conversational leverage or shallow drama. We recall the story of Archimedes, the great engineer. During the siege of Syracuse, while the city burned and the Roman legions approached, he was not out on the walls shouting orders or rallying the panicked citizens. He was in the barracks, utilizing quiet, unwavering focus to devise complex, devastating solutions, optical arrays to burn ships, immense mechanical claws to overturn them. He was the definition of quiet power. He did not need the attention of the Senate or the roar of the crowd to validate the physics of his defensive strategy. His solutions spoke for themselves, delivered not through rhetoric, but through devastating action. When the Roman soldier finally breached the city and found Archimedes working quietly on a diagram in the dirt, refusing to acknowledge the chaos surrounding him, so absolute was his concentration, the soldier felt so dismissed, so disrespected by the physicist's complete lack of acknowledgement of the invasion, that he struck him down. That moment, tragic as it was, highlighted the total intellectual authority of Archimedes. His focus was so independent of the world that it transcended life and death. That indifference is the ultimate expression of authority. Consider also the American Civil War general Ulysses S. Grant, known throughout the ranks as the Silent General. Unlike many of his verbose, self-promoting peers who constantly issued flowery declarations and worried about newspaper editorials, Grant said almost nothing. His communications were famously brief, direct, and solely focused on execution. This taciturnity made him nearly impossible to read politically or emotionally. It focused external attention entirely on his results, the strategic fact of Vicksburg, the relentless advance in the wilderness. When Grant did speak, his words carried the accumulated weight of his reserved power. He was a force of nature, not a man trying to talk his way into history. His silence was his greatest strategic advantage. It meant the enemy learned nothing of his plans until the first shots were fired. The 7-word deployment rule for the next operational cycle impose a severe constraint on your daily verbal output. Before you open your mouth in any setting, professional or personal, determine if the crucial point can be communicated in 7 words or less. If it requires explanation, caveat, justification, or self-defense, it is likely unnecessary or strategically compromised. Your default posture is silence. Listen to the intelligence being presented. Allow others to exhaust their tactical maneuvers and reveal their anxieties. A general does not interrupt the enemy's deployment. He observes the weakness it exposes. When you must issue an order, ensure it is concise, directional, and final. Eliminate the softeners that signal weakness. I think we should. Perhaps if you could, if you don't mind. These phrases undermine the authority of the speaker because they signal a hidden request for external acceptance or validation. The man at peace doesn't make requests. He makes statements that reflect reality as he defines it within his jurisdiction. He speaks with the weight of facts and the finality of decisions already vetted by the rigorous logic of Law 1 and Law 2. The weight of unused ordnance, that is your aura. The rain outside this window, soldier, is the ceaseless petty noise of the world, the demands, the criticisms, the shifting expectations, the chaos. It will never stop. It is the constant background static of the battlefield. We are not fighting for comfort. Comfort is the enemy of discipline and the surest path to compromised borders. We are fighting for sovereignty, the state of peace, a aura. Deum homing en paz consigo mesmo is not a vacation. It is the strategic advantage gained by the total operational mastery of your internal domain. You asked how to project natural authority that attracts loyalty and repels disrespect. Stop trying to project anything. Authority is not something you project, it is something you become. It is the visible byproduct of continuous, uncompromising internal strategic deployment. When your logistics are flawless, you are immune to external noise because you know exactly what is worth your effort and what is operational trash. You cease being desperate for validation because your worth is calculated based on metrics you control. Effort, integrity, and unwavering adherence to your defined code. When your defenses are absolute, you are immune to provocation. Your stillness under pressure transforms you from a vulnerable target into an impenetrable fortress. Others sense the futility of trying to move you, and they cease to try. When your reserve is deep, your presence carries weight. You attract quality because quality seeks competence and silence. You repel the petty because the petty require constant reciprocation of drama, and you offer none. This peace is not granted. It is earned through continuous vigilance, through the daily battle to hold the line against your own fear, impatience, and desire for external approval. It is the peace of the veteran general who has seen every possible form of chaos and realizes that the only variable he can truly command is the angle of his own spine and the deployment of his own focus. This is your mission brief. This is the field manual for true power. Leave the chatter to the recruits. Leave the emotional warfare to the desperate. The enemy is outside, but the vulnerability is within. Go now, and begin the endless operation of fortifying the Citadel. Hold the line regardless of the damp or the exhaustion. Your internal peace is the only unconquerable territory left on this earth. Do not let it fall. Dismissed.